So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about, there's two aspects of the deal. One is the part that you guys have been working on, which is gathering all this information. Ultimately, what's the purpose of this? The purpose of this is to put it to work as it pertains to a deal. And when you think about where that rubber hits the road, all of that information you guys work on and put together, it comes together when you're sitting across from the other side and negotiating the deal, right? All of the work you're doing, that's the only purpose you're doing it for. So doing all this great work and having a lot of analytics and theory behind it, if you cannot deliver that message in a crisp, concise way with conviction, and what I mean by conviction is looking someone in the eye and believing in what you've done and not wavering, it's no good, because at that point in time, you've done all this work, you know it's right, but you just can't get the other person convinced around this, right? Okay, so what we're going to do today is talk about that part of it, which is what happens at the deal table. We'll talk a little bit about the process. I'll give you some techniques by which you can actually negotiate. We'll talk about some of that. And at the end of this, you're actually going to negotiate. And unlike other classes where everyone's a winner and everyone's above average, there's actually going to be a win or lose here. Meaning, one team's going to negotiate with the other team, and you're going to have very specific objectives. You'll have some time as a team to debrief and come up with your strategy. But at the end of it, I want to see you guys put the tools to work. And because this is sort of the first negotiations class, maybe for many of you, it's not going to be critical that you win. You know, there is a right and a wrong answer here. We'll talk about that as part of the debrief. But it's more important that you put to test the skills that you're preparing. So let me kind of talk about why that is as we get into this. But before we do that, I have not had the opportunity to meet all of you. So just going around, can you guys give me your name, a little bit about the background, you know, tell me something interesting, whether you're in school, working, whatever you're doing, and think about one memorable negotiation. So let's get into the course now, and let's see if this works. Perfect. So I mentioned earlier that game theory was invented by this guy, John Nash, Princeton mathematician, and if you've seen the movie A Beautiful Mind, you'll know that he was actually insane. Anyone remember that movie a few years ago? Yeah, so he was borderline insane, and the reason that is so important is because it takes a special person to look at human behavior in negotiations and be able to quantify that and create a framework around it. In 1994, he won the Nobel Prize for game theory for something called the Nash equilibrium. And what the Nash equilibrium basically talks about is this right here. You know, you cannot really predict the outcomes if we analyze decisions in isolation. It sounds so simple, right? Oh, well, yeah, that's obvious. But there's actually a framework around what goes into that. And what that basically means is, when you think about a negotiation, it's a game. It's like Monopoly. It's like, you know, any other game that we play. Every player, depending on the other person's move, has a decision to make. And that choice of what they do changes constantly. So it's not like you can just sit there and say, here's what's going to happen. When one person takes a step, the other person now can consider that and decide what to do or not to do and so forth. I want to set the stage because much of what we'll talk about today is really taking what you have done thus far around understanding the analytics and putting that to work in negotiating a deal. And when you do that, I want you to think about the moves. I want you to think of it as a chess game, right? Because ultimately that's sort of what drives the deal process. So let's look at the life cycle of a transaction, okay? This is fairly generic, but we'll talk more about, you know, other ones. And along the way, if you guys have questions, stop me. This is from the perspective of a sell-side transaction. So, Sarah will tell you that our firm, Redwood Strategy, we're a small boutique M&A firm based out of San Francisco. And most of the work that we do is actually representing the company selling itself to potential buyers. That could be private equity, that could be other buyers, etc. By the way, that's the more lucrative side of the business to be. The buy-side transactions are not that lucrative. How many people have had any kind of transactional experience? Buy-side, sell-side? No? Yeah? Yeah?
Well, we're doing a sell-side transaction right now for a biotech firm.
Yeah. And
we haven't sold it yet, but we're in the middle of it.
And have you had a chance to look at the fee structure on the sell side versus the buy side?
I don't know what the fee structure. I've never done anything on the buy side. So.
Yeah. So typically speaking, sell side tends to be about twice as attractive from a fee than buy side. Why is that? Yeah.
I was told, but I'm not sure if this is the case, that on the sell side you sell the company and then you're done, but the buy side you kind of have to stick it out and make sure that it integrates the way it's supposed to and all that. I'm not sure if that's the case though.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. Even the sell side is starting to become more like that.
Yeah. Because
of the earnouts.
Okay.
You know, no one used to be in the 80s. You just get a check. Thank you for your company. Here's $50 million sale. These days, no one's doing that. Private equity firms will never do that these days, and strategic buyers are adopting the same approach. They're saying, look, we'll give you $10 million, and then we'll pay you $5 million over the next 5 years. So that's happening. But the reason sell side is a lot more lucrative is because it's actually a lot more work. Think about it. You know, here we have a company. We have to make this company attractive candidate amongst all of its competitors. We have to then go find potential buyers. We have to then negotiate the deal. We have to, you know, take them through due diligence, you know, get the financing in place possibly, and then close the deal, right? That's a lot of work. On the buy side, what are you doing? You get an offering memorandum sent to you. You're looking at it. Okay, yeah, this looks like a company that's sort of in our space. Let's go put a due diligence team there. So a lot less work. But having said that, that's why the fees are a lot more lucrative on the sell side. So our focus is primarily doing sell side transactions.